Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, the standalone version of the Witcher-themed card game. And today, what I was thinking we ought to do is unbox a few card packs. Now, technically, in this game, they are barrels, quote-unquote, but you get what I mean. So, what we have is a lot of in-game currency. So let's head over to the shop, and what we'll find is that if we look at card kegs, we will see that there are several different variations of kegs, and again, those are technically the packs that we can purchase. And so there's the premium keg. Those are basically just the fancy looking cards that always cost real world dollars. However, using the in-game currency here, which is called ore, which we get from winning matches and generally completing in-game quests, we can purchase packs that are specifically focused on one of the 6 factions. That is, including the initial 5, Northern Realms, Nilfgaard, Monsters, Skellige, and Scoia'tael, as well as the Syndicate faction. This is actually, from what I understand, more or less one of the only ways to get Syndicate cards. So that might be an interesting thing for us to look at picking up. Also, there are some specific card kegs that I've not looked into too much, but it seems that these are game expansions that you can basically focus on getting cards that are only from that expansion or something like that. And then there's the basic keg down here, which does a little bit of a mixture of the various factions that you see up here, with the exception of the Syndicate. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to go for the base keg in order to get ourselves a broad range of cards and not focusing specifically on any one faction or one expansion. So I recommend using the base set kegs if you are relatively new to the game, whereas later on, once you have a better sense as to which faction you prefer playing as, and maybe you might have some specific cards that you're trying to target, then it might make a little more sense for you to go for one of the more targeted kegs. So, for that reason, let's go with the base keg, and we have a lot of this in-game currency. I have built this up over the course of, well, I don't know, let's say a month or so, spending some every now and again, but again, this is 100% from in-game, did not require any purchases, so it is possible to play this game 100% free. Well, here we go. As you can see here as well, as you could see, there is also the option to purchase these with real US dollars, or whatever your currency is, but on this occasion, we have enough in-game currency that we can make it happen. So, let's unbox some of our kegs, shall we? So we can click on this button here. Oh, and actually, I did have 2 kegs lying around already. I was thinking we'll do 25 for today. And then maybe, if you guys have an idea as to what you feel like the best kegs are, then, you know, like maybe we want to do a little bit of those targeted kegs if you feel like there are some really good ones there, like one of the expansions maybe. I haven't really looked at them at all. Maybe one of them is really good. Then we might spend some of our remaining currency on that instead. So the way the kegs work is that you get 5 cards in each keg, and the specific faction that they are related to is what you see on the back here. So this is Nilfgaard, this is Scoia'tael, this is neutral, so it could be something that you use in any deck, and then this is Northern Realms. And so these are all entirely random here. And so they'll be mostly normal rarity, and the way you can tell is that that little triangle in the top left corner there, if that's the silverish gray color, then that means it's a normal rarity card, so nothing too amazing there. And you can actually see that we have 2 of these already. Scoia'tael, you see that we have another one of these, or well, this is also a normal rarity, we actually don't have this one yet. And so, I think we're going to go through these relatively quickly, because if we're trying to unbox 25, then that's going to take us a little while. And let's take a little bit of time if we find ourselves unboxing something that's a little bit higher rarity. And so all of these cards here are guaranteed to be at least normal rarity. I mean, there's nothing lower than normal rarity, but on this occasion we actually did get a little bit lucky and got a random rare card. So this one is from Northern Realms. We do have one of it already, but it has Formation, which means that if you play it in the melee row, it gains Zeal, so it can use its skill immediately, but if you play it in the range row, it boosts itself by 1. And then it has the Order, which damages a unit. That's the thing that you could use immediately if you place this guy in the melee row. And then Inspired means that if he is already boosted, then he deals that bonus damage instead. And then what happens is, so we have these 4 cards that are sort of predetermined that will be most often normal rarity. However, in the middle here, we'll have the choice to choose between 3 different cards. They will always be at least rare rarity, if not better. So this is kind of your guaranteed one better, if not potentially much better card. So here I see that we have 2 of these Forbidden Magic cards and one of the Nausicaa Brigade. So let's maybe go with the Fiend and take that. That is, I believe, a monster card, which is what that red background is. So let's open the next one. So let's see, that's 1 keg down. And you can see, based on the glow around the card, what type of rarity it's going to be. So these are monster as well. The red with the 3 slash marks. Wyvern, we have several of those already. Drowner, I've seen many people use this card, although we actually do not have any at the moment. So that looks like a good add. Slave Hunter, plenty of those already. Okay, and this was actually one of the ones that we just chose not to take when we were selecting between 3 earlier. Ploy, so when you play this card, damage a boosted enemy, or an enemy unit, I should say, by 3. And then here, when it comes to the 3 that we can pick between, we have already taken Waylay once before, because... So obviously this isn't my first time ever opening packs, so I have some cards already from previous packs that I've opened. So for that reason, I think, why don't we take the On-Crate Greatsword, which, whenever an enemy unit on the opposite row takes damage, boosts self by 1. So if you're in the melee row, whenever someone in the opponent's melee row takes damage, this card gets boosted by 1, or if you're in your own ranged row, whenever you damage a card in your opponent's ranged row, then this card gets boosted by 1. And it is a Skellige card, which is what that purple background is, and that is a card that I've been eyeing because that is a very good one, I think. Alright, so let's move on to keg number 3, see what we get here. And looks like no lucky rare cards here. Unfortunately, we're looking at some pretty common cards. We have several of. Wild Hunt Warrior, we only have one of those, and this is actually the first of these we've gotten. Chimeridium Shackles, lock a unit and damage it by 3. And it is a neutral card, so that is actually quite versatile, I would think. Lock means that you can basically remove whatever special abilities a given card might normally have, and also, in this case, deal some damage to it. Not bad. As for the rare card, now, okay, so we definitely have already taken each of these cards previously. Now, as can occasionally happen, you might get lucky and find yourself with an animated card, which is kind of like the equivalent of a foil card in other, like real card game, like physical cards. So even though we have 2 of these and we only have 1 of the Griffin, I think we take this because it's animated. So that's pretty sweet. And that is, I believe, if I remember correctly, what the distinction of the green sort of highlighted-ish color is on that card symbol there. So basically, if it has the brown symbol, that means that we own a normal version of that card, whereas if it's this green one here, that means we have an animated or otherwise somewhat more extravagant version of the card. So, let's see. When we are done with this, we're going to have 2 kegs remaining, I think, because we had 2 to begin with, because I forgot that I already had those. Impenetrable Fog, we do already have one of those. It is a weather effect that deals some damage to the highest unit in a row on our opponent's side. Or actually, I suppose you probably could use it on your own side in very specific circumstances. You might choose to do that, but for the most part, probably not. Other than that, nothing amazing there. Let's see. As for what we want to take here, we have 1 of each of all these. We just saw the Griffin last time around, but opted not to take it. As for what we want, though, I would say that I tend to play mostly Northern Realms and Skellige. Those are the 2 factions that I play most often. So for that reason, I think I might go with the Raging Bear. The highest damage unit of all those. It does have the downside, where when you play it, it deals 2 damage to an allied unit, so that would normally be a bad thing, obviously dealing damage to yourself. However, Skellige does have a few cards that actually gain power depending on how many units are damaged at all, and that sometimes even includes your own units. There are many that count how many damage units your opponent has, but there are some that also look at how many damage units you have. And if you play this card first, then there's no units for you to damage of your own, and therefore it's just a really strong card, and there's no downside. So let's get to the next one then. Here looks like no surprise rares or better. Another Drowner. Doppler, I've not seen before. So let me just give this a closer read then. Choose a unit in your hand, then boost self by the total number of units in your hand, which have the same primary category as that unit. Huh. Okay. That one will take some brain power to figure out how exactly that works in practice. On Crate Warrior, okay, we do have some of that already. And then here you see another example of a card where we have a couple of the normal versions of it and also the foil or special version. There's probably a technical name for it, but I don't remember what it is. As for the rare card we pick here, now we do have one version of both Rot Tosser and Epidemic, so it seems like Valororn might be the way to go then. It is a 3 strength unit, then when you play it, triggers a bronze allied skills or allied unit's Death Wish ability. I have seen many people play this card before, on second thought. Now that I give it a closer look, basically, monsters have many cards that do an effect when the card gets destroyed, and so what this does is it allows you to use that ability even, or when you play this card, and you don't even need to destroy the card that would normally need to get destroyed to trigger its ability. Oh, except, let's actually take it. Okay, great. Let's open the next one. Oh, okay, so here you see the orangish gold border around this. This means that this is going to be a legendary card, so I'm looking forward to checking that one out. Let's take the other ones first, though. We have a almost said human pirate. I hope it's a human pirate. This is actually a really good card. We already have one of, but I use it a lot, so I'm very happy to see that. Other than that, okay. Cards that we already have, no big deal. As for what we get here, legendary, and we get to choose between the 3. So let's take a close look at all these options here. And already my eyes are jumping towards the Skellige and Northern Realms cards, because like I was saying before, those are the 2 factions that I tend to use most often, so sounds pretty sweet. Let's see. So we have Wild Boar of the Sea, has 4 strength. If you deploy it in the melee row, damage all damaged enemy units by 1, then damage all enemy units by 1. So do it twice, but on 2 separate occasions. I think I've seen someone use this skill, or this card, once before. And like I was saying earlier, Skellige has a lot of cards that are become more powerful, depending on how many damage units there are, particularly when it's your opponent's units, so this is a strong setup card, it would seem. Then as for this one, Zeal means that you can use your order ability immediately. Normally you would not be able to do that. I suppose we should click on them in full. And what is that order, though? Gain 1 charge whenever either player plays a card. Okay, so you just get... Oh, and sorry, the order itself is boost a unit by 1. So your ability is you empower a unit a little bit, and you start off with just 1 charge. However, you can get an additional charge every time someone plays a card. So if you play this in, say, the first round or very early on, and you get a charge every time someone plays a card, then that's going to be a whole lot of charges and a whole lot of boosting. So that is also a very intriguing setup card. As for this one here, Scoia'tael, 5 strength, so a little bit higher base strength. If on your turn you control 5 or more allied elf units, summon this unit from your deck to the melee row. Ah, so you can actually play this card directly from your deck, not your hand, giving you basically a free extra 5 strength card to unexpectedly jump out onto the playing field. Interesting. I could see how it would potentially be very strong for, obviously, Scoia'tael units or Scoia'tael faction decks. But I feel like I don't have enough other cards that are Scoia'tael themed. I'm not sure how many elf units I even have at this point, so I'm definitely leaning toward one of these. As to which one I would prefer, that's tough. I think this number that you see here is the quote-unquote provisions number, which basically means that it is more like how much total resources a given card uses, and you have a sort of maximum resource amount that you can allocate in a given deck, which prevents you from, say, using entirely legendary cards in every single spot on your deck, so that you don't just completely destroy your opponent with all these amazing cards, which obviously does sound like, well, why not? But at the same time, does mean that you have to build a little bit more of a balanced deck, and therefore probably is on net for the best. Now, the reason I bring that up is because I'm seeing that this card, the Skellige one, has 12 provisions, whereas this one over here, the Northern Realms card, has 8, which means that this one is easier to fit into a deck because it's not going to cost us as much of those resources. It's going to make it so that we can have the other cards in our deck more powerful. So I think for that reason, if we're looking for a tiebreaker, let's use that as the tiebreaker, and we'll move on to the next one. And this, the purple border, is the second best after the legendary that we just saw. This is epic. We'll see what we get there. Right, we've definitely gotten that guy before. Same with this one. We've not gotten Bone Talisman before. Boost an allied, all allied units by 1. That's a neutral card, so you could use it in any deck. That seems like something that, particularly for Northern Realms, which is a faction that focuses very heavily on boosting your allies, that could be very powerful there. Rot Fiend. I've seen many people use this in monster decks. I'm very surprised that we did not have it yet. So Death Wish, the ability we were talking about earlier, it triggers when this card gets destroyed. It deals 4 damage to a random enemy unit. Alright, as for the epic, though. Alright, we do have 1 reinforcements already, which would spawn and play a base copy of a bronze allied unit. Basically, that would mean that you can pick whatever bronze card from your deck you want and play it. And bronze is basically the normal rarity and rare rarity cards. They will have a little, quote-unquote, bronze border around them, whereas the epic and legendary cards have a gold border, as you see here, because these are all epic cards. Then, I've not seen this before. Alzur's Double Cross spell. Play the highest unit from your deck. That sounds amazing. Basically means that, obviously, this does take up a card in your hand, so it's not like you're making a new card appear on the playing field out of nowhere. You're not getting card advantage, per se, but it does guarantee that you're getting what would presumably be your strongest, if not one of your strongest cards. So that is very tempting. I've seen some Scoia'tael people use this card before. Deploy, so when you, and I'll click on these in full, like I was saying before. Just give you a brief look at what we have on the ones that we just talked about. As for this one, when you play this card, destroy an allied unit, then spawn 2 Elven Deadeyes in this row. So a little bit of sacrifice in order to get a couple of elves. Well, if we had picked the other Scoia'tael legendary card earlier, then that might have been a good synergy there, but unfortunately we did not. So I think what we ought to do here is choose between these two, because they're the ones that we don't have on the left and right, and technically speaking, as of this recording, the season, the Witcher or the Gwent, I should say, season that we are in, is one that allows us to cast any spell twice whenever we play a card. So I think for that reason, if we're looking short term, there is definitely an additional bonus to getting some nice spell cards. So let's use this one. And it is also neutral, so we could put it in any deck. which is nice, that versatility. Alright, next one up. Let's see. On Crate Warrior. Okay, we've seen many of those. Werewolf, we already had one. I don't think we've seen one today, but already in my deck. Predator Dive, we may have seen one of those today already, but we've seen plenty of them, or we already have plenty of them. Same with Ointment, so I won't bore you with the simple cards. As for what we have here, though, we have a Viper Witcher, which is a Nilfgaardian card. When you play it, reveal, show a card to both players, then hide it back in the hand or deck. Reveal the top card from your opponent's deck and banish it. Okay, so you basically make it so that your opponent will never be able to play the top card in their deck. Okay, I mean, I feel like in their hand would be a lot more significant because in their hand, you know they were probably going to play it soon, whereas top of their deck, it might be something that they could have theoretically played in the next round, but it might not have been. And, however, we do have a copy of each of these alternatives, so I suppose let's go with that one, for variety's sake. Next pack up. Okay, we have a Bombardment already. Likewise, the Dwarven Mercenary. Rot Fiend, we got one earlier today. And Arrakis Venom, we have one of those as well. Let's move on here, and I think this is a fairly simple choice here when we have already an Ice Troll in our stockpile. Likewise with Dol Blathana Bowman. And so let's go with the Drummond Queen's Guard, which is a Skellige card that I've also seen people use, so I think that this could be very useful for, like I was saying, the Skellige deck that I've been playing fairly frequently. Order, so you can make your card use this ability when you have Berserk 3, meaning that whenever it gets lowered from 4 strength to 3 strength or lower, spawn a base copy of itself, and summon it to the same row. So like here's a great example of a card that on Skellige, when it gets damaged, it can become more powerful. It gets damaged, you summon another one, that one gets damaged, you summon another one, so on and so forth. So let's go for that. Alright, let's move on to the next pack. More rare. Lucky rare here, so remember these are by default at least normal rarity, but are not guaranteed to be any better than that. So here we got lucky and got another Impenetrable Fog. However, we did see one of those earlier, so maybe not necessarily the rare we would have liked to have gotten, but a rare no less, when we weren't necessarily expecting to find one. And here, similarly, when we already have each of these alternatives, let's go with the Elven Swordmaster. And I think I'm gonna deliberately not spend as much time talking about the rares. We'll focus on the epics. That is, again, a random epic. We were not guaranteed to get anything other than just a normal rarity card there, so that is very nice. Dwarven Mercenary, plenty of those. Dol Blathana Bomber, have one of those already. Combat Engineer we did not have. It's a Nilfgaardian unit. If you control an artifact, boost self by 3. Okay, now let's see the epic. So it does mean, when it's not this big one in the middle, that we unfortunately don't get to choose between 3, but it is, like I said, still a very nice card to get, because we were not anticipating that we would get anything other than just normal rarity. Destroys all artifacts, and it is a neutral card, so we could use it in whatever deck we want. It's actually rarer than the special cards that we got in the middle here, and again, having already stockpiled, picked up an Imperial Diplomacy and a Crow's Eye. Let's go with the Scoia'tael Neophyte here. Alright, onward we go. Nothing terribly special here, it doesn't seem. More werewolves. More people from Dol Blathana, or more elves, I should say, more specifically. Pyrotechnician is a new dwarf for us. Whenever we can order it, meaning direct it to, damage a random enemy unit, and self by 4. Meaning, well, it has 4 strength, unless it's boosted. Taking yourself out there. Wolfpack, we also have several of those. As for what we have here, well, we have several of each of these cards. And so for that reason, it doesn't make much of a difference as to which one we take. So I will go with the Raging Bear, which I do believe we took earlier. Carrying on. Again, with the normal rarities, unfortunately, no luck there. Not this time round. Lots of cards that we already have. As for the rares in the middle here, we saw the Viper Witcher earlier. However, we do not yet have Tersiech Veteran? No idea how to say that word. And it is Skellige, so I'm very happy about that. Let's take a closer look. When you deploy it, damage self by 3, so hurt yourself again. A little bit of a theme here with Skellige. However, when it gets damaged enough to be all the way down to 2 life, it goes berserk and heals itself. Huh, that's interesting. So it doesn't necessarily get more powerful as much as it can just take a lot of heat. Well, actually, I take that back. Because most of the time, when you play this, it's going to immediately drop down to a 5, which means that it's starting out as a 5, and only until it gets bumped all the way down to a 2 does it go up to its full potential at an 8. So it actually does get more powerful if you can manage to damage it enough to get down to 2. Okay, so yeah, let's definitely take that. Good card to pick up. We didn't have it yet. Okay, again, with just the normal rarities here. See if there's anything that we do not yet have. Unfortunately, not the case. And, okay, so here we have a few rares that we do have one of a piece on left and right. A couple of the battering rams. I love this guy, though. This pirate. Great early turn card to play for Skellige. It has Zeal, meaning you can use the ability immediately, and it gives an enemy unit bleeding for 2 turns. Normally, it would have a 2-turn cooldown. However, if you play a ship, you can decrease that cooldown by 1. And there are definitely plenty of ships that you can play with Skellige as well, so I like it. Let's take it. Alright, and about 10 packs left. Man, so many packs. Unfortunately, again, normal rarity here. However, we can see that we do have an epic there, so that's very exciting. We got a Doppler earlier today. Hawker support, already have one of those. Seen plenty of predatory dives. Peasant Militia, we have not yet seen. Neutral card. Boosts an allied unit by 2 when you play it. Maybe? Maybe under some circumstances, there might be a use for that, but the epic cards, this is what we care about, right? So let's see. We do not yet have any of these, but what do we have in store here? Let's take a closer look. Wait, is this actually animated? It is actually animated. Okay, so, if we're not certain which one we want to take, that would probably be a pretty good tiebreaker. Princess Pavetta. She is Northern Realms, that faction. When you play her, shuffle a bronze unit and all copies of it from your graveyard into your deck. Huh. So that would seem like she's a late game card. Or, well, second round, probably. Ideally. What you do is assume that you have played some really good bronze cards, which are, again, the normal and rare rarity cards. You played some good ones of those in round 1, and then you play Princess Pavetta in round 2, get all those cards from your discard pile back into your deck, which makes it so that likely in round 3, you would perhaps find those cards again. So, I mean, that does kind of assume that you are playing 3 rounds, which, since it's best 2 out of 3, you might win round 1 and round 2, in which case that's unnecessary, but I do like me some good Northern Realms cards, so still tempting, and it is animated, like we said before. As for the Skellige card, at the end of your turn, heal all other units on this row by 1. Huh, so this is actually the exact opposite of many of the other Skellige-themed cards that we've seen earlier today. And for that reason, I don't know, I'm a little skeptical. I mean, under normal circumstances, healing would probably be useful. You can get back to your previous strength if... Or actually, I was initially thinking this was a deploy ability, meaning that it triggers once when you first play the card, and then it never happens again. However, I realize now that this is every single turn. And that makes it a little more tempting, but what I was going to say was Skellige, like we were saying before, does benefit from mostly having enemy units damaged, but to a certain extent, its own units as well. So for that reason, with any other faction, this would be probably better than it is with Skellige. So, circumstantial. Probably certain situations in which it would be very helpful. As for the Toad Prince, however, deploy it in the melee row and consume a unit with 3 or less power. So consuming is a thing that is pretty much exclusive to the monster deck. And it means that you basically, well, destroy a unit on your own side and boost this card by that unit's power. And I am not much of a monster player myself. If we had already taken each of these cards, then obviously I would take it, but I think let's go with Princess Pavetta for the reasons previously discussed. As for this one, unfortunately, just normal rarity here. We'll see if there's anything new for us. Not yet. Unfortunately, no. However, rares, we have several that we have not yet picked up. We have a Nilfgaardian card. Boy, spawn a base copy of this unit and summon it to this row. Ah, so you basically double this card when you play it. Interesting. Okay. So in some ways, it's almost like it's a 6 strength card. There might be some circumstances under which having 2 weaker cards might be better than having 1 stronger card. There is this Skellige card. When this unit is damaged, summon all copies of it from your deck to this row. Again, the theme here with Skellige, under some circumstances, you do actually want to take damage, even on your own cards. And we have many of the Blue Striped Scouts, so we'll definitely not take him. I think we go with Skellige, because I like Skellige. Alright, again, just normal rarity here. Nothing special. Except for this Reinforced Ballista we did... Oh, actually, this is unexpected rare. I did not catch that. It is also Northern Realms. Nice. Formation, meaning if you play it in the melee row, it gains Zeal. It can use its order immediately. But if you play it in the range row, it gets boosted by 1. It has 1 charge to deal 1 damage to a unit. However, if you resupply, meaning if you play a Warfare card, then you gain a charge back. Okay. Well, I mean, we don't have a choice. We're definitely taking it. And it's better, presumably, than a normal rarity card, so a nice pickup. As for what we take here, well, we were looking at this card earlier, not long ago. How about this time we take it? Okay. 8 left, I believe, and here we go. Blue Mountain Elite. Okay, we have plenty of those. Plenty of Predatory Dives. Plenty of those. And as for the rare... Oh, okay. So this is nifty. We do already have 2 Blue Stripes Commandos. And the maximum number of the normal cards and rare cards that you can have in your deck at any given point in time is 2. So there's no real benefit to getting a third one of these cards, other than how it's animated. Whereas these ones, we do have 1 of them already. However, we would theoretically be able to place a second one in our deck if we were interested in doing so. So let's take a closer look and see if they are amazing, in which case I might still opt to take these. Otherwise, we'll probably go with the animated one, because it's animated. So deploy in the melee row, damage an enemy unit with half or less than half of its base power. Oh, destroy! Ugh. Destroy, okay. Huh. You can outright get rid of a card, but it has to have half or less than half of its base power. Now, if you want to do that against a powerful card, then you're going to have already dealt a pretty sizable amount of damage to it. However, that is something that Skellige is pretty good at doing, so that seems like that would certainly be possible. As for the Foglet, Death Wish, meaning, again, once it gets moved to the discard pile, summon a copy of this unit from your deck to a random allied row. So basically, you just can't get rid of it. Even if your opponent tries to. So, or even if you consume it yourself, which is, again, something that the monster decks can do. So that is not a bad card. Now, I do play Northern Realms fairly often. I tend not to use this card, but I am still tempted. But I think I will resist on this occasion, because I do think that this is genuinely a better card. This is still rarer because it's animated, but we'll take this one. And if it turns out that we're about to get another one of this, then 20/20 hindsight. Oh, a random epic. Like to see it. Like to see it. Okay, Slave Driver. We only had one previously, so that is good that we can now get up to 2 in our deck if we think that is worthwhile. Same thing with the Half-Elf Hunter. As for the epic, I have seen people use this card before. We did already have one of them. It's a monster card, damages an enemy unit by 6 or boosts an allied unit by 6. So you have the choice of either boosting yourself or damaging your enemy. That versatility is helpful. As for the rare card here, we have one of each of these. First thing we'll look at next then is, are any of them animated for a tiebreaker? No. So I think we actually got an Elven Swordmaster earlier today. Torrential Rain I use fairly frequently with the Skellige deck to damage a whole bunch of enemy units. I have seen a lot of monster people use this in their decks, though. Consume an allied unit. Again, you can consume one of your own friends to power yourself up. And you can actually do that. You have 2 charges, so you can do that twice. Ooh. That's nifty. I do like this card a lot, but I feel like that might just be a better card overall, even if I'm not much of a monster player myself. Alright, let's carry on. Just normal rarity here, it seems. The first few cards. Although we don't yet have Petrie's Filter. Zeal, meaning it can go immediately. Order, boost an allied unit by 3, and give it Zeal. Okay. Appointment, we have plenty of those. Same with the Fire Scorpion. As for the rares, we have 2 of these, so we'll probably skip that one. Could have a Rivian Pikeman. When we deploy it, damage an enemy unit by 2. And if we resupply, which is something that happens whenever we play a Warfare card, then we can boost this card by 1. Or we can have a Hawker Smuggler, which if we play it in the melee row every allied turn, on our turn end, we boost a random unit in our hand by 1. This card, from what I've seen from other Scoia'tael players, is very good. I think we go with this. Not that I'm a huge Scoia'tael player, but I think it's a card that we would very much like to have if we were to try to do more Scoia'tael. Okay, plenty of those already, plenty of those already, and plenty of those already. As for the rares, 1 of each. So what would we like then? No obvious choice here, just based on our current stock or the state of animation for these cards. Golden Froth is a neutral card, so we could put it in any deck. Boost 3 adjacent units by 2. Now, it is neutral, but as I was saying before, boost is something that is very common with Northern Realms. That would probably fit quite well in a Northern Realms deck. We saw this guy earlier today. I don't remember if we saw this guy earlier today or if I already had one. I think we'd go with Golden Froth, though, because the Northern Realm synergies will be very helpful. That is one of the 2 decks I play most often. Okay, plenty of those, plenty of those, plenty of those, and plenty of those. As for the rares, we do have 1 of each. However, I mean, the Viper Witcher is animated. It looks pretty sweet. Really hard to turn that one down. However, I do think that Kaedweni Revenant is really good in high numbers. So if I remember correctly, order damage a unit by 1. So when you play this card, damage an enemy unit. or I guess technically it could even be your own unit. If, when you deal that damage, you destroy a card, you spawn a base copy of this card and summon it to the same row. So basically, this card can multiply. And for that reason, it seems like if you can get a lot of these, granted, you can only play 2 or have 2 in your deck to start off with, but that does seem like that would be a very nice thing to have, but it's animated and it looks amazing. It's not just like a kind of animated, that looks really good. So let's take it. It's just rare. It's not like it's an epic or a legendary that's going to be really hard to get, so we'll probably find another Kedweni Revenant. Maybe not today, but hopefully in the near future. Alright, just a few packs left. Let's see what we can get here. Plenty of those guys across the board. As for the rares, okay, plenty of Impenetrable Fogs. We did pick up an On-Crate Greatsword earlier today, and I was commenting about how I do think it's really good. And I do play Skellige very often, so that would be quite nice to have a second one. Master of Disguise at the end of every allied turn, meaning our own turn, boosts self by 1 if there is a locked enemy. And so locked is when you basically make it so that your opponent's card cannot do its normal abilities. And Nilfgaard does have access to a lot of lock cards. However, I think these are probably similar in power. They're both quite good for their specific factions, but given how I use Scoia'tael more often, let's stick with the theme. And then, ooh, an epic here. That's looking good. The other stuff, not as much so. Things that we've already seen. However, what do we have here? Herein is a Scoia'tael elf. Let's take a closer look. When you play him, lock a unit and move it to the other row. Okay. Not only do you remove the card's abilities, you also relocate it, which can mess with some people's strategies, depending on how important their positioning is. So that's interesting. However, let's take a look at the other stuff, because I do see we have Northern Realms and Skellige, so it's going to be a little bit hard to dethrone these. Let's take a closer look. The Bloody Flail is a warfare card. Give an enemy unit bleeding for 8 turns? That is an insanely long time. For each soldier you control, decrease the bleeding duration by 1 and damage that unit by 1 instead. So basically, for every soldier that you have, instead of having that be damage over time, it is upfront damage. 8 turns is a really long time, so much so that most rounds will last maybe 8 turns, but often shorter than that. So that gets a little bit tricky to get the full effect of this card. But then again, Northern Realms also does tend to, it seems, play longer rounds because the theme is the boosting, like we've said before, but it tends to be slow and steady boosting. Like, you'll get boosted by 1 at the end of each turn, is one of the most common things that you'll get with the Northern Realms, and so, for that reason, you basically want the round to go as long as possible, so that you can continue to boost your cards as high as possible. You want the cards to go for a long period of time, and therefore, Bloody Flail does pose a little bit of an offensive, or is a bit of an offensive way to complement that. However, what is the Skellige unit we have here? Summon a Skellige unit from your graveyard into an allied row. Okay, so I do already have a Skellige card that is similar to this. I think it is one that exists in the starter Skellige deck, and it is specific. That card, the one that we already have, is summon specifically a bronze Skellige unit from your graveyard into an allied row. However, this one does not specify bronze, which means you could have any rarity card that you summon from your discard pile. Remember, bronze border would be just normal rarity and rare rarity, whereas this one, it could be normal, it could be rare, it could be epic, it could be legendary, as long as it's specifically a Skellige card. So the neutral ones, you won't be able to do that, but that does seem awfully good. Awfully good. That way, if you play a powerful Skellige card in round 1 or round 2, you can get it back for round 2 or round 3. That seems like that's hard to turn down. Alright, awesome. And I believe this will be our last pack, because we did have 2 packs to begin with. Or maybe there's one after this? I don't know. We'll see. Nothing special there, there. Actually, this is an unexpected rare, though. And we did see this guy earlier, so that's a nice surprise. One that gets more powerful after he gets lowered down to 2 strength. As for the rare we choose, and this is the situation we were predicting earlier, where we opted to take this guy instead of, I forget, was it an animated card? I think that might have been it. Yeah, an animated card that we already had a couple of, whereas this guy we only had 1 of at the time, so we said, well, it might be nice to have 2 of these so that we could put 2 in our deck at once. Now it shows up again. However, on this occasion, we do have this guy who we've only taken 1 of thus far, so let's go with that. And we'll throw in 1 more pack here, because I believe that will put us at 26, but a little bit of a bonus pack for you. Will it have anything good in it? I don't know. We'll have to see. Swallow? Not great. Not great. Not great. We do have all those already. However, on our last card here, we could get Rot Tosser, which we only have 1 of at the moment, and it is a clever card, an interesting card that is a bit of a Monty Python reference. Kinda, sorta. And also, I suppose, a bit historically accurate as well. Where it's, if you put it in the range row, when you place it, spawn a cow carcass. And normally you would spawn that cow carcass on your opponent's side. And what that cow carcass is a unit that at the end of the next turn destroys itself. And, or well, it's fine. Okay, that's why it always ends up on the other side. Okay, so yes, it always ends up on your opponent's side. It gets destroyed at the end of your opponent's next turn. And at that turn end, it gives the adjacent units poison. Poison, if you apply it once to a unit, doesn't do anything. If you apply 2 rounds of poison to a unit, then it outright destroys it. So if you can put the poison and get 2 rounds of poison on one of your opponent's strongest cards, then it's a great way to just delete it. So, let's take that. And I suppose, with my 1 remaining keg that I already had, we can open that one as well, because I forgot that we had a couple. Or, well, I did remember that we had a couple, but it was just more so that probably should have bought 23 rather than 25 here. So we'll open 27 in total, so be it. Pyrotechnician, we saw earlier. Aracus Venom. Plenty of that. And plenty of that. However, the rare... Okay, unfortunately, we do have 2 of each of these. So nothing terribly new here to us. And for that reason, I'm not sure there's much of an argument to make for taking any one of these cards over the other, because we already have the maximum amount that we could use in our deck at any one given point in time. So I guess we'll take the Northern Realms card? I don't know. I suppose so. And there you have it. 25 packs with a couple of bonus packs thrown in as well. We got at least 1 legendary and several epics there. So that gives you a sense as to what you can get if you manage to stockpile that many kegs and unbox them all at once. So with that, hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next one.